Hello, everyone. We're here to talk about a very fun and special game, Little Nightmares. It's spooky. Imagine you're a kid again, and everything is scary, and you feel so small. And there's all these adults around you, and you're trapped, nowhere to go. That's what Little Nightmares is. It's a game where you're all alone. You have to traverse this horrible world, and there's nothing you can do against these forces that are trying to hurt you. That is the world of Little Nightmares. It is a cruel, cruel place, and people want to escape. Some people escape to the mall, other people get lost in TV and don't really have a choice. But both games, what they do is truly remarkable. In the first game, you follow a little girl named Six in her raincoat, and as she adventures through the mall, eventually discovering its secrets, finding out how it works, and eventually getting all the way to the top. Second game, you follow a kid named Mono. He is what a lot of people assume to be Six's older brother, and you two as a pair traverse this insane world until I want to get into the twist. But either way, both games are phenomenal. So in terms of visuals, think Guillermo del Toro meets claymation. It's these very weird and distorted entities just interacting with you and chasing you. And everything is just so grotesque, everything feels like a dream. It's like a Tim Burton film made into a video game is how I would describe it. Now, the biggest thing about this game is the sound design. Just everything about it is just atmospheric, and they landed it to perfection. Now, that being said, try your best to put yourself into their shoes when you're playing. It really adds to the experience, and it makes everything that just that more horrifying. Anyway, it's a very interesting game. It is a game that came out around the time of Limbo and Inside. Little Nightmares is a 2.5D side-scrolling horror adventure, and it has this claymation aesthetic that I instantly found intriguing. The characters are deformed, and your player character is a child, and she's tiny compared to them, just giving this entirely depressive horror tale that's really reminiscent of children's tales and Goosebumps and things like that. So that being said, I was instantly into it. I loved everything about it, from the aesthetic to the gameplay. It took me a while to finally get to it, as I just finished it now, but seeing how it's Halloween, I figured I'd talk about it because I just finished 1 and 2, and with 3 being on the horizon, I figured why not. When the first game came out, I was instantly on my radar. I was intrigued, interested. I love the aesthetic, I love the art style. This game was right up my alley, but for reasons, I just never got into it. Or to be more specific, I never got a chance to play it, just because of gaming backlogs getting longer and longer, and just a bunch of transitions I was making in my personal life. Now, that being said, because I didn't play the first one when they announced the second one, I was happy, but I really didn't pay that close of attention because I didn't want to get the first one spoiled for me. Now, I finally played both, and I'm here to talk about it. Now, before we get into the meat of it, this is not a review. This is just me exploring it and giving my thoughts. I'm just going to get this out of the way and share my thoughts and ratings on each one. Little Nightmares 1 was incredible for a first start. I loved its world and character designs. Actually, I think it has the best character designs out of all 3 parts of the story, that being the first one, the DLC, and the second game. Now, while I thought the second one was better, the first one very much stands on its own. And to give you some context, I'm going to be ragging on the first one a little bit, but not because I didn't like it. In fact, I think it's an 8 out of 10. I just think the second one was a 9 out of 10. So, with that out of the way, let's get into it. The first Little Nightmares puts you in the maw. It's this oppressive, Lovecraftian, looming presence. It is a character of its own. It is the host of untold monstrosities, and the way it tells its story is very much in the vein of, look, it's what's here. It's very much the Dark Souls method. Only with Dark Souls you get item descriptions, but in Little Nightmares you get essentially nothing, leaving lots of theory channels to figure out the story and what's actually happening. Not that you can't piece it together yourself, but it's a lot less straightforward than you would think, and you have to very much observe what's happening to understand what's going on. The second one gets a little more clear with its storytelling, but it is still mostly environmental. While the first game really condenses you into the maw and its oppressive atmosphere, the second game is more open and big, introducing more concepts and more gameplay mechanics and more just overall just scope. And to be completely honest, nothing portrays that more than the intro to the game, which reintroduces the maw to the character in a very fun nod to the previous game. And I'm just going to show you that scene because it's very fun. First game, you play as a little girl named Six. She's a little girl in a raincoat who doesn't speak and only has a lighter on her. She is navigating through this world just on her lonesome, with sometimes interacting with these little gnome creatures, as you will find out, run the maw, which is the location that the game takes place. And as you go, you encounter what are essentially the adult characters, which are these massive, terrifying, just claymation-esque characters with these distorted limbs and distorted features. Everything in this game is distorted. It is either too big or too small, but that only adds to the atmosphere of the game. The second game is more open. It takes place first in a forest, and then a lake, and then the city, which, while oppressive, it is still more open than the mall, with these giant open spaces that you traverse in these before you go into the more claustrophobic buildings. It is a little bigger, but it is mostly still claustrophobic areas. Now, I would describe this game as horror, but it's more of a horror light, as in there's no gore in these games. When you get captured, the camera cuts away before anything bad happens to you, so you don't see any children getting mangled, nothing like that. Using my favorite storytelling method, which is letting the mind do all the heavy lifting for you. Now you're still there, you're right there, you're in the maw, or you're in the terrible classrooms, the train stations, the hospitals. You are there with these characters. The atmosphere, the sound design, it all adds to this amazing experience. But you don't see anything happening to these characters. It's all implied. So if that was something that was pushing you away, you don't have to worry about that for at least these experiences. I'm getting a little off track. Let's get back to the first game. So the first game takes place in the maw. It's this ship that is run by these gnome characters that I was mentioning before. Now there's a secret to these characters that we find out through the DLC, that being that the gnomes are actual children, which are helping it run. Now, a lot of this world has to deal with consumption, with hunger, fear. And that's a major theme of the first game, is Six's hunger. Now, I forgot to mention, Six is the name of the main character in the first game. It is the little girl that wears a raincoat. She doesn't talk at all, but we all know her name is Six through developer interviews and their character bios. But Six's hunger is a major theme of the first game. She is constantly hungry and eventually opting to feed on the gnome creatures, and actually feeding on the woman running the mall at the very end, becoming the new leader of the mall. But anyway, sorry, I'm rambling. Back to themes. So the first game pits you against a different boss per area. As you keep exploring the mall, you explore the different parts of it that make it run. So there's the janitor, the creepy guy with the long arms that will like run and try to grab you, and there's the chef who will instantly try to cook and eat you as soon as you appear. There's the hungry mob that chases you down and tries to kill you. And don't forget the woman in the mirror who can turn people into gnomes apparently, but she is afraid of her own reflection. All of these places and locations and levels serve to emphasize a different portion and part of the maw as you explore it. And in the DLC, you get to explore a different part, which is the opposite direction you go during the main game. So during the main game, it's a side scroller, so you're mostly going to the right. In the DLC, you explore a path that you didn't see. You explore a path that you weren't able to go down, and you follow a little boy who is adventuring the same time that Six is, and you'll actually see Six throughout his adventures as you get to watch from a viewpoint of her doing her thing. Now, the gameplay is fairly simple. It's run, hide, grab, jump, and sometimes throw. It's a really simple experience, and it's not too hard, to be completely honest. The game is very forgiving with its checkpoints and what it is expecting you to do. If there is a monster chasing you, you hide. Sometimes you have to grab certain objects, but they're basically all there. Now, there isn't a HUD to speak of, but if you do take too long to figure out what to do, a little hint will pop up telling you, hey, go do this. They were still very much finding their footing with the first game and the DLC. There's nothing groundbreaking. It's basically just all atmosphere and sound design, and then the grotesque things you're encountering, until the final twist at the end that Six is the new leader of the Maw. The Maw is more of a character than any other person in the entire game. It's this interesting creation. It is a ship that, while being horrible, is preferable to the outside world, which leads us to think, what is so wrong with the world that these people would choose to come here and live this horrible existence? And we find out that, like everything, the Maw has its secrets, and part of the fun of the game is discovering those secrets, finding out how the Maw works, how all these different players interact with it and keep it running. And as you play the game, that's essentially what the story is figuring out where you are and overcoming these obstacles and just seeing how the Maw operates. The first game is very much a bare bones attempt. Gameplay loop isn't very hard, and it's very light on story. Did I enjoy it? I did enjoy it. And it's very short. It's only about maybe 5 hours long, 4 if you know what you're doing, but every single part of the game has no fluff. It's all there, and it's all dread, it's all slow, and everything is weighty, and it just feels nice. The DLC is more of the same, and it just gives you more of the Maw to explore. It's not bad, but it doesn't add anything new, just more creatures and more. It's essentially just more of the game, and it just makes the game longer. Now, that being said, the thing that really got me on board for this series is the second game, mostly just because it adds so much to it in terms of beauty and gameplay. There's more you can do. You can use weapons now. Not that you really will be, but there are certain sections requiring you to use weapons, specifically the mannequin area. Now, that being said, the second one is a lot more polished. The set pieces seem a bit larger in scope and more thought out, and what you can do within those set pieces is there's just more there. In my opinion, the second game is where they perfected the formula. It's scarier. The lighting is beautiful. It's a lot prettier. It's visually a lot more appealing than the first game. Not that the first game wasn't a looker, but the second game is just gorgeous. Its lighting and its sound, they just perfected everything. The second game really ups the ante in terms of storytelling, gameplay, lighting, just everything that they could think of, they improved. Its narrative, its chase scenes, its monsters, everything is fantastic. And while it's like the monster designs aren't as unique, aren't as scary in my opinion as the first game, they more than make up for it in the levels themselves. Every single level feels extraordinarily distinct and has its own identity. The first game is very much the same thing almost the whole time. The second game, every single area feels different. Now, in the DLC, they remedied this a little bit, but for the most part, the second game is the best one. The forest feels way different than every other area. The parts of the TV is unique. Every about 30 or 40 minutes, they're changing up locations and gameplay loops and just all the mechanics. And they actually try to tell a very compelling story with this one. It speaks to me, at least as a sibling, to the sibling love that you have for your brother or sister. And because of that, I think it really excels in what it's trying to do, which is just be a very fun horror video game. It knows what it is, and it's not afraid to be that, which I fully respect. Now, that being said, like I was saying before, I enjoyed the second one a lot more than the first game, mostly because of its variations of gameplay and just overall just improvements in all areas. Every problem I had with the first game was fixed in the second, and that's why, as a complete package, it really just loops into itself in a very nice way. Now, the second game levels were a lot more frightening. The first game's monsters, in my opinion, were a lot spookier, with the exception of the snakehead lady, which I'll just show you some examples on screen of Little Nightmares 2 just being terrifying. right now that there are no jump scares in this game. There are spooky moments and there's grotesque things happening. It is very much a dreadful horror. One of the more interesting things about this game is how the characters change throughout their experiences. For example, 6 gets more hungry and she gets more brutal as the game goes on. And every single encounter that she has changes her, and she becomes more and more drawn into the maw. Now, Mono, on the other hand, doesn't have that effect. Everything he does doesn't really seem to affect him, but it affects 6, showing her transformation from essentially being naive, this naive little girl, to this horrible monster at the very end. And the thing I love about this game is that there's actually a very fun final boss, which I don't really want to spoil now, but yeah, visually the second game really kills it. Now, they are making a third game, which I'm very excited for, and yeah, I really enjoyed my time in Little Nightmares. Both games, they're not very long, the DLC is good, and the monsters are fantastic, and the scares are good, and very good vibes. And the music and theme that you've been hearing throughout this video are also very fantastic, and it adds so much. It's a variation of the Three Blind Mice song, and it adds this childlike wonder to the horrors that we're experiencing. And it's just a very, very good game series. If you haven't played it for some reason, please go check it out. They're very cheap, they're on sale a lot, and they're very short experiences, so you could honestly you could play the whole thing in a day if you really wanted to. But yeah, these are my thoughts on Little Nightmares. If you guys like this video and want more, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to do more videos on this, so if you guys want to see that, please let me know. That being said, that's going to be the end of this video. This video is sponsored by me. We have merch and we have a fundraiser going, so please check us out at luxabruptum.com. We have lots of t-shirts, custom designs, things of that nature. We also have accessories on our thread list, which is you can get to through our Lux Abruptum site. And we have a fundraiser for interest you at all. Please check out luxabruptum.com, follow our socials, like and subscribe, all that jazz. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys soon.